loud. Perfect. So now we're recording. So topic today is, like I said, top three objectives for 2026. And I found a Gartner report that talks about the four priorities for CHROs in 2026. Anyone have any guesses?
AI's got to be somewhere on there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like one, two, and three.
Mhm.
So one is harness AI to revolutionize HR, and I'll put this in the chat. Two is to shape work in the human machine era. Three is to mobilize leaders for growth in an uncertain world. I don't know if that's really AI, but everything around that. And four is address culture atrophy to power performance.
That's pretty all AI oriented. I feel a little bit like odd man out because I'm definitely not a CHRO. I'm selling and marketing into the HR marketplace, but my goals for this year are to develop better skill sets in listening and understanding where I can add some value for people so that I don't just show up and throw up with information, but rather, be more strategic and understanding, how I might be able to help or not, and leverage AI. And I was a fairly early adopter with AI, but I don't know if everybody else remembers, but 2, 3 years ago, uh, the nerds kept it under wraps. They wanted you to learn all kinds of scripting languages and all kinds of junk. And, at that time I was working for UKG and they were embracing AI, but they were like, well, now, before you can use it, you got to use only our secured in-house one. And you got to go through this class, this class, this class, and this class before we'll give you a license to it. It turns out that really it was just keeping it under wraps for IT people. That's how I felt anyway with it. So I kind of backed off, but I embraced it, maybe a year or so ago, a little more fully. And recently in my company, our CEO has decided that a lot of what he's doing in the day-to-day stuff, he's handing off to me or to his brother, our COO. So initially, I was working setting up meetings for him, but now I'm taking the meetings that I'm setting up for him. And we're leveraging AI to do a more strategic job of communicating with people because, of course, AI can listen to your meeting and it can do a much better job than I can do as an old guy, and summarize that and provide back meaningful information to that potential client with what would be of value to them. So I've been doing about 10 times the work that I was doing 2 weeks ago. And I was just thinking about this yesterday. I mean, I was at a point where, frankly, we didn't have enough going on. I mean, we're a very successful company, but we didn't have enough going on because we hadn't been all that marketing focused. I was able to do my job in about an hour and a half or 2 hours every day. And I just kind of had to tap dance so that, it looked like I was doing something, which is not very good, but it was factual. Now I'm busting chops for 8 or 9 hours a day, and I would need 16 or 20 hours to do the in-depth work that I'm doing around each of these engagements. If I had to go through and listen to recordings, or for gosh sakes, if I didn't have the AI that lets me listen to recordings and look at a transcript, if I had to remember that and take manual notes, it's just not possible to do what we're able to do if we leverage AI properly. And it's scary. I'm typically in a room, I'm the oldest guy in the room. I'm trying to be the person that leverages AI the most because I don't want to become redundant and irrelevant. So,
Mhm. What are you hearing from your clients? Or is AI a big push for, I assume you're working
yeah,
within your clients are selling to directly to HR, so are they asking for
every
AI?
serious conversation I have, because we have we have kind of a hook that we're offering for a brief consultation. We're offering either a 50 or $100 Amazon gift card once the meeting's done. So we got a lot of looky-loos that just want the gift card, and that's okay. That's part of the cost of doing business. But the folks that have a sincere interest in improving their HR tech, almost every one of them wants to know, uh, not just if we have AI in our solutions, but is it effective? And can you show me how that can be effective? Can you explain to me how that can be effective? So
Yeah,
it's
that's great. I'm curious for everyone else too. Is AI a top priority? Is it in your top three for this year? And if so, what is that? What does that look like? Is it just integrating AI or is it beyond that?
Turner, new to the team. And so back to this camera. Hi, everyone. For
Hi.
us, we're trying to integrate AI in the way that we use our tools, especially when it comes to um, sharing repository and SOPs and stuff like that, being able to do that um, and utilizing the HRIS systems when we think about we're in this compensation season right now when we're uploading information, pivot tables, all of those things into that system, generating the letters, really trying to streamline AI from that perspective to help us with that look.
Mhm. So AI from an HR standpoint.
Yes.
So that's like the priority number one, harness AI to revolutionize HR from the Gartner study.
just, if you don't mind my tagging in, just one of the things that kept me a little bit afraid of embracing more use of AI was at least a perception or a lot of conversation out there that if you use AI, people are going to spot that and they're going to ignore it and they're going to consider you somebody that's irrelevant because you're just relying on AI. I've not had anybody give any feedback like that. And since I've been using AI more extensively, I've had a lot of people say that, you provided really insightful information about our meeting, and I really appreciate that. I mean, they didn't say, you ain't that smart, it was AI that did that. They may have known that, but I don't care. I mean, it's not about protecting my ego, it's about doing a better job. So,
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, I'll say some of what I'm focusing on here is using AI with like data analytics, specifically like integrated with Power BI. So Power BI used to be, at least in my humble like 15 years, this sort of like black hole of you have to be some sort of coder to understand it and to build out your own, dashboards. The IT team or engineering team would have to do that. And I think for many of my clients who use, the Microsoft Suite, utilizing Power BI and AI together has enabled us to like really look at a macro and micro level for any type of analytics that we're looking for to be more predictive, to be more proactive. So that's probably just I over index in analytics certainly, but it's something that in 2026 we want to be experts at. Like we want to expertly be able to say this is how we marry ethical AI with our data analytics and show the changes that we've seen based on when we didn't use it and how we just utilized Power BI versus when we paired AI and Power BI together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think it's going to help HR like harness that information to be more strategic too, right?
Yeah, we at least like one of our philosophies here is like we back up all of our opinions with data, and if we don't have that data, we'll go get that data. That data is there. Like HR people are incredibly intuitive. You've got your ear to the ground. You have deep relationships. And so taking the step further of like I know there's data around this, I just need to find it, and I think that just makes leadership conversations faster, easier, builds trust with them that it's not just my feeling here, it's our data. But I think your feeling can drive the desire to go get that data.
that
So
calls to mind a question that I have is how much are folks making use of agentic AI? Because that seems to be where everything's headed. So you don't have to really suss out every situation if you have pre-built agents that you can say, gosh, I got an issue here and this is close. run this agent on it. Are people at that level yet? Are folks using that real world other than the AI experts?
We are. At HR Rebooted, we're using it. I mean, we're managing 5 or 6 agents, and some of it as basic as, go through and run me a weekly report on every legal update in every state that we're in, right? That we have offices in. Um, I really I'm trying to figure out one for my email box.
And how
Like a number
have
one
you
priority
identified
for me this year.
have you identified useful tools to help you with that? Because I mean, of course, we're all bombarded with all kinds of take this course, sign up with this consultant, but a lot of it is just, a never-ending black hole that you go down, as you alluded to earlier. Have
Mhm.
you found tips and methodologies that have helped you with that as you go to develop those?
Yeah, I'd love to hear from other people too. I'll tell you mine and I'll open the floor. I like to use Writing IO. But it gives you access to all the different platforms, all the
What's the
different
name?
LLMs.
What's the
And
name of it?
writing.io, I can put the link in the
Okay.
chat, but it's basically an LLM aggregator, I guess is the best way to say it. But you have all of the different LLMs in there, so you can pick and choose based upon whatever spirit moves you that day and whatever LLM you want to have access to. But you can build some of those tasks or agents in there as well. But we also use, chat just to go right to the specific LLM to build some of the agents as well. What is everybody else doing? I'll put that in the chat.
I know one thing I'm trying to figure out how to do is use it better in investigations because that's primarily what I do. And, I came from an environment where I had lots of resources and lots of help to being a solo consultant. And so I'm trying to figure out ways to save time. So far, what I have found has been next to useless. So, um, one of the things is, something like, and it's not agentic at all. It's off the rack stuff that, like a note taker or that kind of thing. And I just found if I had a note taker, summarizing my interviews, it missed everything, everything of importance, anything that would be, take intuition. Um, and even in an investigation where I interviewed like 30 witnesses, you would think it would get better as it went along because it would start to see what the issues were and it just really wasn't. So and I found I still had to take great notes myself or hire somebody to take notes because I don't record. Um, interviews. That's just, maybe a lot of investigators have come around to that. I do not do that because I think it changes the dynamic a lot in the discussions. But if anybody comes across anything that is useful, um, just in terms of saving time, I think investigations still need the human element, but to be uh, upfront. But there's a lot of ministerial stuff I think that we could cut down on the time that we spend.
Hmm.
Are you using AI to help create your executive summaries for legal or for whomever? I think that's a way that I found some benefit with AI in investigations.
Yeah, I think that I have done that and that is helpful. That's also something I can do pretty quickly and easily myself. So, that's not the it is helpful, but the bulk of the time is getting the meat of the interviews down in writing so I can determine what I'm going to use in a report. And so far, I've not found something that's real helpful for that. But you're right, summarizing or executive summary, it can do that usually pretty well. You still have to vet it pretty darn carefully. Um, but but um, but I do think that that can be helpful.
My friend is a doctor and she uses a note taker, and it's probably one they sell to doctors all the time. So it's probably
Yeah,
medical
specific,
specific,
yeah.
but she loves it because she can just focus on the patient and everything else is happening in the background. And she seems to say that it's pretty accurate most of the time. She goes in and edits it. So I don't know. I can find out what that tool is and see if
Yeah,
it's
that would be
specific
really
or.
helpful if it's not specific for, medical technology and is more of a general thing, or maybe has different levels, because yeah, that's exactly why you want it. You want to be able to look the person in the eye, have the conversation, look at nonverbal cues, and it's hard to do when you're desperately trying to write everything down, which is why it's usually nice to have an assistant, which I do not have. So
Actually,
um,
the summary tool with Zoom, with the pro license with Zoom, is pretty incredible. I mean,
that's the one I've been using, and
it
and I
hallucinates. Yeah, it hallucinates, but it's
what I was more concerned about was, because if it was hallucinating, I could pick up on that. But about missing like really important facts. That
yeah,
was what I was concerned about. Like you didn't talk at all about, when somebody was sending you inappropriate pictures on the
yeah.
cell. Like, how did you miss that?
Mhm.
Well, and I think some of that is I think there are safety nets built into Zoom's AI to avoid recording things that might be embarrassing to someone. So if it has anything to do with sexual innuendo, I mean, because I'm pretty plain spoken and I say
Which
whatever
is
I
the
think.
world I live in.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I'll say stuff that I think, oh my God, that's going to get transcribed and my boss will see it. It doesn't show up. I mean, it's still recorded
That's
unless there was something
fascinating.
else.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, can you talk more to your comment on institutionalizing AI? What you're seeing from that perspective?
Hey, sorry, I'm literally in the middle of feeding an 11-month-old. So I was
You
like,
have to put them
okay,
on camera then if you're gonna have them on the call.
Come on, everybody shows us their cats. Show us your kids.
no, but yeah, no, just to just to respond, Michelle. Yeah, basically, like a lot of the people we work with, in conversation with them, we're saying, yeah, all our employees are going, they're using ChatGPT, they're using Claude, they're using whatever tools they can get their hands on to do a lot of this, in our case, specific work around giving feedback to one another. And the companies want to have a slightly uh, not more control, but they want to be able to say we're all using the same things, we're all basing it on the same value systems. And so they've all come to us and said, you have, in our case, we have AI available within our platform. Can we customize it? Can we not only add our core values, but add other elements around our culture? And so when people ask it questions or ask it for help to do things, it takes those into account. So that's sort of what I was inferring, is people are just sort of running off and using these other tools, which is great because they're trying to save time in the process, hopefully keeping the quality high. Um, but companies want to have sort of a stronger sense of, well, are we keeping it constructive? Are we keeping it in line with what we believe fundamentally? And how do we sort of unify everyone around that similar voice? So, yeah, so we're working ourselves to try to find ways of providing those knowledge bases, which you can do on the back end of all these different tools, but for our own sense, so that feedback isn't just, you know, people are really bad at giving feedback to each other to begin with. And so when you hype that up with AI elements that reword it in different ways, it's sort of amplified. So if we can help them to keep things constructive and focused, then that's great.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I met somebody a couple of months ago and she's putting together an AI tool for HR professionals that helps leaders kind of think through some challenges. So instead of just giving them an answer, it actually
Hmm.
like adds that human element to it. So for example, if somebody falls in the bathroom, right? And you go to it, I'm not sure you'd ask AI, but you might ask AI, what should I do? AI might say, call for help, right? But she builds in, okay, is it a women's bathroom? Is it a men's bathroom? Maybe you should send a woman in there if it's a women's bathroom, and all those like little steps that like the HR person might, if there was an HR person there, might say, but
Yeah.
without having an HR person, it helps them think through all of those kind of like the human elements and
Hmm.
balance.
No, I love that. And it just I think you just to add to that, this is completely unrelated, but speaks to sort of what you said, which I was reading yesterday about in the New York Times about people using um AI before they go to the doctor, or like looking up symptoms and then freaking out because the AI is a bit sycophantic and will play into all your worst fears and concerns and things like that. And how doctors in large part appreciate people doing some element of research ahead of time, but not necessarily coming to them with the solution. And so, one of the suggestions in this article, which plays into what you just described, is rather than asking, well, I found this, this is how I feel, or here are my symptoms, or take a picture of this mole and tell me about it. Instead, using the tools to ask you, what are three really good questions I should ask my doctor about this? Or what are other ways I'm not thinking about that I should be investigating or following up on these things. So I like your example, which was sort of here's a different way of going about it rather than just asking it to solve the problem for
Mm-hmm.
you, which it's going to do in the way that you really want it to do, whether that's the right way or the wrong way.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think from like an HR perspective, I think that's a good lens to have when you're thinking about institutionalizing AI of like, what do we really want it to do? And what are the things we want to think about when using it in an organization? That's not just everybody, because I think that's the situation, Matt, where everybody's coming, like it's a bring your own device, right?
Yep.
It's
Yep.
like when phones first came out or the
Right.
smartphones first came out, and we had to figure out how to manage that. What else? Are there other things that folks are working on as far as AI goes? One of the things that we've been working on, I'm doing a keynote the beginning of March, and around this theme that AI is an orchestra without a conductor, and HR needs to be that conductor for the orchestra. And I think that ties to what Matt was saying around institutionalizing it. Like, how do we integrate our values? How do we, Kayla said it, how do we use it ethically or responsibly? How do we, integrate it to throughout the organization? Do we track it? All those things. And bringing an HR is really good at bringing everybody together and all the right players at the table to have those conversations. And I think that's, if that's not happening in 2026, I think it's going to happen pretty quickly.
That's a really great point because without that, the liability exposure is incredibly high. And I think HR leaders that are on top of it are going to position themselves as much more valuable and much more essential in the business structure because you're not only uh, a hold of tools to manage the most expensive resource that an organization has, but you're also the front line of defense against tragic PR and legal entanglements that can occur.
Mm.
And if you're not using some automation to kind of big brother everything, then you're missing an opportunity. It's a delicate balance between what's too much and what's absolutely essential to keep things from spiraling into a mess.
Great. And when I was talking about HR owning it, I got a lot of pushback from, well, why isn't it IT? And so when you talk about being the conductor, it like just takes away that friction because that's what HR is really good at doing in a lot of cases, right, Charlotte, in investigations, in employee relations and change management. And this is a change management initiative. And so you need that person that's going to pull all the pieces together and bring IT to the table and bring, the CFO to the table and the CEO and all of those people that have a voice around what AI should look like in the organization.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, Michelle, because it's a lot like family dynamics. If a kid wants to get his or her way, the key to it is they gotta make it seem like it was mom's or dad's idea. If you're gonna take ownership of it, you ain't gonna win. And it doesn't make any difference that we're so far away from that. We're still right there. If you're gonna approach your boss and say, look at me, I got a great idea and I'm gonna do this, they won't ever do it.
Mm-hmm.
So the skill set to uh, get someone to believe that you may have provided a kernel, but it was their idea. And that's another place that AI is a great tool to do that. Because you can
Mm-hmm.
literally ask AI, help this person see what we talked about as having value and own it. That it was their perspective, not my perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a year ago, 2 years ago, you had to be able to talk bits and bytes to write a script to do that. Now you just say, that's what I want, and it spits it out for you. Now it isn't perfect, and you've got to edit it, and you can't just take what it says verbatim, but it's a tool now that you can use. I don't want to say manipulatively, but persuasively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It definitely makes life easier, right? You kind of get a kickstart. Yeah, and Ray, if you want to speak more, I think that's a great comment, and I think it's another reason why, that's part of that integration, right? The oversight and integration is really training. You can't just throw a tool out there.
I was doing sorry that I can't be on camera right now. I was doing something the other day gathering some information and I was using Copilot and Copilot gathered this bit and then it gathered that bit and then it gathered that bit and that was all pretty good. Then I said, could you just prepare a report with all those three sections? And like all of a sudden it lost its memory of what it had been doing. It's like, so I actually was better off taking the output of those three bits and just gluing them together myself into a document, which now had uneven formatting, but I wasn't worried about the audience wasn't in that case wasn't worried about formatting because the audience was me. But it was a very frustrating exercise of back and forth, and me thinking I just had to give it a better prompt, and finally just gave up. So it's they're not polished,
Right. They're all different too, right?
and there's that. Yeah.
One. Yeah. Yeah. I was actually looking at your comment from a different perspective, like the employees are the users that don't know their instruments well yet, right? Because we're still kind of scratching the surface with AI. And if you're not doing training and L&D as another top priority in 2026, that could be somewhere where you're missing the mark. So if you're rolling out AI and you're using it, but you're not training people on how to use it, the adoption rate will go down. And there was a study recently from, I don't remember where it was from, but it was talking about adoption. There were a couple of different studies. I think there was a Gartner one as well, but it was talking about adoption, and the adoption right now for AI in tech companies, which you would assume would be super high adoption, is only about 30%. It's shocking. And then it goes down from there. So all the other organizations. So I think a lot of that has to do with the learning aspect of it, of letting people know what the parameters are and how to use it and how to use it effectively. And um, then you'll start seeing a lot more adoption.
It is amazing how tech doesn't use tech. I was having a conversation with our COO yesterday, and he had looked at several outreach recruiting posts from other UKG Ready partners, and it was apparent as he looked at it that none of them were using the UKG Ready capabilities with taking apps and doing attendance tracking, or excuse me, applicant tracking, which is just crazy. Here we are out here selling the technology and we don't use it. So it's
Hmm.
it's not just big tech that doesn't do that. It's street level tech that doesn't do it either. We
Yeah.
do. Really.
Yeah. Or you just assume people know what it's all about and you put it out there and then people don't touch it because they're not sure how to use it or what to do with it. I remember when I was at a company and it was just between Microsoft and Google. We were going from Microsoft to Google, and they just IT team just rolled it out and said now we're on Google, and didn't really train people on how to use it. And I just remember everybody being like, I hate this. I'm not using it. And even the CEO set up his Outlook on his computer to like work with getting the mail from Gmail so that he didn't have to use Gmail. But people, I think you just
Well,
assume it's email. You've used email. You'll know how to do this. Go do it.
the whole learning management aspect of HR needs, I think, is challenging because the longer you've been involved with anything that's tech, the more that you kind of, I think, look at it the way I do, which is historically the instructions and the help have been about 3 or 4 revs behind the product because they just couldn't keep up with it. So it almost is a waste of time to go look for help, with the provided help because it's out of date. So it's really silly. Um, in the last 2 or 3 years, since the younger generations kind of took over running everything, they want you to go watch a 7-minute YouTube video instead of just telling you how to do something. So it's like we've gone from out of date to, yeah, we're right on top of it, but we got to make it cute and we've got to entertain you while we're doing it. So it is a challenge. It's a big challenge. You're not going to
Hmm.
get people to use technology until you make it simple for them to learn it and get help when they need it.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah, exactly. Dara, you're on mute, so we can hear you. So if you want to try to unmute, see if that works. Okay, you're unmuted, but I still can't hear you. So it might be your mic issue. Sorry. But I think that's a great point that she brings up in the chat. So Dara says, I'm on my, let's see, she says, I see a lot of groups I'm working with wanting to use AI or train teams to use AI without really understanding what problems they're trying to solve with AI. I think that's a great point, really understanding. And that kind of goes back to HR being the conductor, right? And pulling in everybody to talk about what's our strategy, why are we doing this, what's our policy, how are we going to implement it, and being much more thoughtful and strategic about it.
One of the things I've been working on is basically there's 6 main reasons why AI adoption is failing inside businesses, and that's one of them is not having what the outcome is that you're desiring in mind before you start. And that actually stemmed from a couple sales calls that I had where, the question was, well, why can't I just use ChatGPT for that? And it took me a while to have a good answer for it, but now I've got the answer that is starting to resonate, which is that ChatGPT makes you great and it makes me great, but it doesn't make us great.
Mm.
And so
It's the classic ready, fire, aim prescription.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things too is we're giving people a bunch of individual tools, but we are expecting group outcomes. So it's like measuring apples to oranges. So it's going to look like it's failing if we're trying to measure group outcomes by individual productivity.
Yeah, that's really a great thought. So I think it takes more, right, more thoughtfulness to like roll out AI. The article that I saw too on the adoption was that there was more adoption at the leadership level than at the front lines level. And that makes sense to me because, if you're not telling people how to use it and what the guardrails are, then they're going to kind of stay away from it. But when you're in leadership roles and you're close to the decision making, right, you kind of know those norms, like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. You might not necessarily need the strict policy
Mhm.
to figure that out. I have an analogy that I like to share about this school. I'm sorry if I'm being redundant and you've heard it before, but there was a school where they had this beautiful playground and this outside area. And when the children went out to play, they just stayed very close to the building, and the teachers couldn't understand why. And so one day they put up a fence. And then once the children went out and it was a fence, they played and used the whole playground up to the fence area. And so they just needed to know, like, where are my guardrails, right? Where's the fencing and where can I play? And I think that's the same thing with anything, but especially with AI too. Like, what are the guardrails and how are we supposed to be using this and where can I play and not play? And I think that's a great point, Megan. Like, how do I use this to be effective in my team and not
Mhm.
just be an effective individual contributor?
Um, I'm a former teacher, so I use a lot of analogies too. And I'm also a theater nerd. And so, any of you are familiar with it was an old musical called The Music Man.
Yeah.
So in The Music Man, Harold Hill is the main character, and he goes around telling everybody that their youth are going to hell in a handbasket, and the solution is they need to form a band, like a marching band, and he sells them musical instruments, gets them all convinced that that's going to save them, and then he skips town, so they're left with all these instruments and nobody knows how to play. And I think that's how a lot of AI is being sold right now, is they're being sold, and the AI itself is fine, but it's like a musical instrument. If you don't know sheet music, if you don't know how to play, if you don't know how it's going to sound next to the other instruments, it's not going to do you any good.
Mm-hmm.
I love the analogy of a conductor, but as I hear some of this conversation, I think that really the role that HR plays an awful lot today is a guidance counselor. And I don't know how you position that because, a type A hard charging CEO, male or female, is probably their favorite person in high school was probably not the guidance counselor. And yet, if they used that person, that probably had more influence on their later success than anyone.
Yeah. Does anybody have a comment to that?
I've, yeah, I mean, I can see that for sure. I've talked about it in terms of a travel agent too.
Hmm. Mhm.
But yeah, trusting that somebody else can actually guide you, and that you don't know everything is sometimes that's hard for some executives to
Mhm.
do.
Well, nobody wants to be led. Everybody wants to lead, you know. Um, Pardon me digressing to something totally personal. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 44 years. My oldest son is also, and there's a role in AA of sponsor, and that gets widely interpreted. Some people really resent that. I think I don't need somebody telling me what to do. I don't need somebody trying to cram their religion down my throat. Blah blah blah. My son uh, does the best job of explaining what it is. He says, I'm a tour guide. All I'm doing if I agree to sponsor somebody is I'll share with them what worked for me. If they don't want to do that, there's nothing I can do about it. But, I owe it to them to tell them what worked for me.
I like that too.
What other priorities are people focused on? And they could still be around AI this year. To your point on the guidance counselor thing, Scott, I wonder if anybody is starting to feel the anxiety, the employee anxiety around, or try to manage some of those concerns around AI and how you're shaping, this is priority number 2 on the Gartner study, shaping work in this human machine era.
I mean, it's so central. If you don't get buy-in from your team and from your people, it's there's just no way it's going to work. And people are afraid to admit what they don't know, and they're afraid to admit that they're afraid. Um, and so, as HR, creating spaces where it's just normal that we have to start from, quote unquote kindergarten and work our way up so that everybody is confident and they understand the risks and they understand what the rules are going to be. You have to get your people all on the same page.
How are you seeing people do that?
Beyond some initial training, I'm not sure. I haven't seen yet what's happening inside of a lot of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard anybody mention it, and I don't want to keep dominating the conversation, but it's got to be on people's minds. How do we individually and as groups of people working together navigate the divisive situation that we have in our world today? You can't just ignore it. Some of it's not just politics. Some of it's just purely what's right and what's wrong. How do we stay true to our own ethics, our own morality, and yet not drive wedges between each other in a business environment or potentially with clients? I mean, it's on my mind every time I open my mouth because I have no filters. I've had to build filters over the last year because I've never had any for 78 years. I've done without them, but today you can't operate without filters. And I would think that for folks that are in that CHRO role or anywhere in HR, that would be something that would be keeping me awake. How do I guide people with that? Not just how do I do it myself, but how do I guide people so I don't exacerbate an already tough problem, but I help solve it.
One of the things I've noticed just across the board, not just in businesses, and it came up when I was talking to my 20-year-old, she did something and I said, like, can't you just use your common sense? And it made me stop and go, wait, we're losing so much common, whatever, this drastic drive toward individualism. And we've lost common. So we're seeing breakdowns in every type of ecosystem. We're seeing them from families, churches, communities, and then businesses, because we're all operating as, from the Three Musketeers, we're all operating as all for one, me, 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 me. And it's the breakdown of any kind of cohesiveness. And at some point, especially with AI, if you're going to be using it as a team, like employers are going to have to do the hard thing by saying, you know what, this is how we are going to do this, period. Like, this is the way everybody needs to be doing this, not what makes you feel good and what makes you feel good. Like, at some point, there has to be some, like, as a group, we have to agree that this is the way we do this, and this is how we're going to present this, and this is this process, so that we get that cohesiveness back and we get consistency, so that when people come back and say, why did this happen, or what went wrong here, you can say, well, this is how we do this, as opposed to a bunch of individuals, operating disparately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Dara made a good comment too in the chat that blue collar training plans or pathways is something she's working on, and I think showing that what is, even though the future is unknown, right? What can we do to help people feel more secure, building out, like, upskilling, reskilling, showing them they do have a path forward and a future, and how AI is going to play into that. What other main priorities are people working on? Oh, Maria, did you want to say something?
Yeah. This is not related to AI, but quite the contrary. I'm still, since I joined industrial economics, because we have a lot of people not working in the same office, is trying to bridge that gap and maintaining the culture that they had. And also because last year, unfortunately, we had to lay off a lot of people. We haven't hired anybody, and you sort of like lose that, that feeling in the office. So we're trying to create any kind of opportunity for people to connect. I mean, we're doing a lot connected to AI, and people use it all the time. And I don't use it as much as you guys do, but in my field, but I'm trying. But I'm more focused this year on kind of like maintaining that culture and like trying to build around, because like just for instance, I helped organize a ski trip, and this year like it's probably going to be the first year that we have to cancel because we don't have enough participation. So it's just like it's so I'm trying to maintain that culture and finding outside of the box opportunities to do that. So if anybody has any ideas or anything that they want to share, that is completely just having that connection. And also because once you lay off a lot of people, the morale goes down. So kind of like building that up. And we're in the environmental consulting field, so it's not the greatest field to be in at the moment. So it's just like building with that, with what we have and with our values and maintaining that. So it's been quite a challenge, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Does anyone have any thoughts or ideas? It's too bad you don't have a lot of participants. This is like the best year for skiing. We've had so much snow.
And that has been one of the things, like that we usually get like new hires, being excited about it, and because we haven't hired anybody since October of 2024, we're losing that. We have a research analyst. We don't have any research analysts at the moment. They're all senior because we haven't hired anybody new. So it's been a challenge to maintain that culture.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, has there been a return to even just team building? I mean, obviously not I know there's some, corny old ways, but, going back to more team building exercises, team building activities, any opportunity to function as a group.
Yeah, in last October, we started doing what we call in-office focus weeks. So although we have several people in this area, our office use is not mandatory. So we're kind of like trying to, have all sorts of activities during those weeks once a month to kind of like, build that back up again. Yeah, we have a winter party and a summer party, and usually there's a lot of activities around that time, and that's when the people from offsite come to our location. But we kind of like try to maintain it every month. Mm-hmm. And food is no longer, an attraction. You have to do more than that.
That's where you need drinks, right? No.
We do drinks too. Believe me, we do everything. Yeah. One thing that really got my attention, we had a massage chair that brought so many people to the office. I was like, wow. So
I think in times where it's uncertain, I think communication is really important. And the more you can communicate and have answers, even if the questions aren't that clear, right? We don't always know what the future is going to bring, but even if you start communicating and even say, I don't yet know, but this is how we're looking at it. This is what we're doing. Maybe we have a committee on it. And one of the things I've seen too work really well is having people work on cross-functional teams on a project. Mm-hmm. And when I was at Emerson, we used to have Innovation Week. And so we would give everybody a challenge of like, you can create a team. It has to be cross-functional, and you can work this week on something innovative. And at the end of the week, you have to present what you worked on, and there would be a prize, and like people got all in, and then they were working together, and they were working with people they don't usually work with. And they got to understand, especially with the tech team and customer service, really got to understand different perspectives.
That's cool.
And that helped.
It's just that push of making it a habit again and getting the momentum going. That's hard, I think, initially, is to just get everybody back in the habit of doing those kinds of things regularly.
Yeah, and as you were saying, we're always working individually is kind of like not losing that human connection.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think that folks that have adapted well to remote technology don't miss the human connection. I feel very connected with people that I'm connected with in groups like this,
I miss
and
it.
do you?
uh,
You know, I regularly connect with people on pretty much every continent, and yeah, I'm just seeing their face. I'm not pressing the flesh. I'm not giving them a hug. I'm not sharing food, but if I'm willing to leverage the technology, I can have deeper discussions than you have casually hanging out around the water cooler or at a mixer, because I'm involved in some groups where we really get down to what's life really about, what's important, what challenging issues are we facing personally. And I think it's actually harder to do some of those things in person unless you're one-on-one in privacy than it is in a group like this. I can share personal things in this group that a normal person wouldn't necessarily share if we were all in person. I would, because that's just me. But I think people, the remoteness is a safety valve as well. I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to run into you at the grocery store or at the gas pump and have you judge me for something, because I'm not gonna. We're hundreds, thousands of miles apart. And I think it's just I have a different perspective because I've been doing remote connections for before there were useful tools to do that. I started doing it because I sold a business and I didn't want to drive 1,000 miles a week because I had 7 desks in 7 cities for a while. And I pushed the envelope. I figured out how to do it with pieces and parts glommed together. So I didn't realize until I had to get a different job that that was a skill set that a lot of people didn't have. Most people have not been connecting remotely like this more than 4 or 5 years. I've literally been doing it for 30 years. So I think it's a skill set we can build. I think we were forced to build that because of the pandemic, but I wouldn't want to never be with other people, but I also don't want to have to drive 300 miles to get face to face with someone or with several someones when I can do it, I can invest an hour and I can have meaningful conversation. So I think that's part of embracing technology too.
I think it depends on the person. And that's the hardest thing I think about the hybrid versus in office versus remote is that it's so individualized. And
Yeah.
for me, I do great work remotely, not to pat myself on the back, but I, I do it. But when I'm in person with somebody, if I go to like an HR conference and I see Charla there, like, or we do our team offsite once a month, I get so much energy from that and I'm like
Yeah.
recharged. And I miss
Mhm.
that's the piece I miss. Like I'm then motivated to go back and then do it again. And I miss those pieces. And so I think
Yeah.
Maria, to your question, like maybe what is it you could do, like understand your team and what their needs are and like what motivates them and like how do you get them to recharge, right? How do you fill their buckets?
One of
Yeah.
the things I've seen a lot of people using more is like Slack or Discord to have group, like just an ongoing group text where it's so easy to just pop on and say to the group, oh, I'm so frustrated by this, or does anyone know how to do that? And it's quick and it's not like as formal as writing an email where you have to sit, and it kind of just keeps sort of a more or less constant dialogue going where you can kind of float in and out. That has helped a lot. People feel connected because they're talking consistently throughout the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
This
I
is
found I've done
fascinating.
that a lot in personal life. Like I have those kinds of, like WhatsApp chats with my running friends or with
Mhm.
running groups and things like that. The lawyer investigator hat, putting that one on is like, oh God, Slack and they're just fodder for so much evidence. So people have to be, you just have to train around it in the workplace.
Like anything, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Does anybody
I mean,
else
I think
find
it's
it?
great. I like a certain level of informality. And I think it's appropriate and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And I think it builds, it builds team. People just have to, like everything else, just be careful.
Mhm.
Does anyone else find it annoying that some folks treat the chat in a Zoom or a Teams meeting as if it was a Slack channel and are constantly throwing little cartoons in there and TikToks and everything? I mean, that's fun when,
Making
but
it fun.
it's distracting if you try. It's
Yeah.
distracting if you try to
It's
accomplish
fine
it.
when it's a social encounter. It's a little harder to do business that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope that was helpful, Maria.
Thank you.
Great. So this has been approved for one HRCI credit, recertification credit. So you can use the code 733207. I did put it in the chat, but it kind of got lost there. So I'll copy it and put it back in so you have it. Maybe. And next week we are going to have Rhiannon talk about how to partner with external resources to meet all of your goals. So it fits today's call, actually. So we talked about your priorities today. Next week, we'll talk about how to lean into some help for those. So thank you, everybody, for joining, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
This, I don't know if anybody else tells you this on a regular basis, but this is delightful. Thank you so much for doing this, Michelle. Thanks
Thank
for
you, Scott. It was a good conversation, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, Michelle.
Hey, how are you? I mentioned you at the beginning of the call, and then you
I,
popped on. You heard me?
Yay. I got stuck on another call. And man, I've had the hardest time getting in here, but